Hello YouTube viewers, welcome to my channel Science to Technology. In today's show, Computer Wednesday, we're gonna talk about Steam Deck. So let's dive right into it. Now, this is from Valve. So it is a handheld gaming computer by Valve. That's all you have to understand. It's basically like Nintendo Switch, but rather than being a console ecosystem, it's basically like a PC that looks like a console, and it will be running custom operating system, which is Steam OS 3.0. Now Steam OS has been in development for long ago, and people have been using it for some gaming PC, Linux PC, or sometimes entertainment, like watching movies and all that, as it was like the architecture was designed in such a way that it is very comfortable to navigate on a TV. So they had been developing this thing for long ago, and it is running on basically modified Arch Linux. So if you know Linux on a fundamental level and you can utilize Arch Linux, you can utilize this puppy on a deeper level, not just like surface UI level. You can go in deep, you can install things, you can uninstall things, you can go YOLO on it. And it will be utilizing AMD Zen 2. So basically it's almost like a AMD 4000 kind of processor, which was not available for desktop. It was only available for laptops. So something of that nature, but with RDNA2 architecture. So think of this. So the processor is not that high end. We have higher end basically desktop processor. However, in terms of generation wise, the graphics chip is really latest. So think of this. CPU is 1 gen back, and graphics card is like latest. Now this is a AMD APU. So basically everything is compact into one silicon die, because again this have to be this small. They do not have the luxury of putting a second chip, so it has to be done that. And this is a custom built system. What does that mean? That simply means Valve went to AMD and be like, okay, we want to have something like this, can you deliver us? AMD is like, okay, order 5 million pieces of this. So it's not something that any other manufacturer or other vendor like MSI or Dell or HP they can order. This is not something like that. This is almost like how Xbox and basically other manufacturer like Sony, Xbox, Nintendo, they go to AMD and it's like, I want a processor. They build custom built for that. It's like that. So it's not just like, okay, Control C, Control V. It's like custom built for Valve. And this has 16 GB of RAM, which is good, with LTDPR5. Now you have to understand that generally graphics card RAMs are much faster than this. You can easily find graphics card RAM that are like around DDR6 generation, but processor cannot handle that. So processors are generally 1 gen behind. Right now most laptops still are at DDR4. So what they are utilizing is basically a compromise. It's not as fast as DDR6, not as slow as DDR4, so it's DDR5, and it is quad channel. Now the reason why quad channel is important is like you can have the same amount of RAM in many systems, but with the same APU, heck, even with higher gen APU, it will not perform as well as this puppy. The reason would be very simple. RAM would be the choking point, because RAM will now be called upon for two duties. First, system RAM. Second, video memory. So basically when you buy a graphics card, it has VRAM into it. So here the VRAM is shared with this main system memory. So having quad channel is very important. That means both of the puppies, basically CPU and GPU, they can be well fed independently of each other, so they can work on independent clock cycle. So that is really efficient. If it's done correctly, it will mean, even though on paper it's not the latest in it, but it should be powerful. And in display, now because they want to run fundamentally PC built system, and they realized very early on they can easily give much larger displays. It's just that there is no system that can power it at this form factor, so to say. So fundamentally they compromised on scale. It gives them two benefits. First, it means most game will run natively 1:1 pixel resolution, no upscaling or downscaling. It will work very well, and at 60 Hz, so more than good enough for more than enough scenarios. And because it's 5 inches, yes, it has enough PPI, but it's like almost iPhone level PPI, pixel per inch. So it can do that. And on top of that, if you want to use it in hybrid mode, basically you want to connect it to something like this, it can do 4K 120 Hz. But be mindful, I am pretty sure that there is no game that can run at 4K 120 Hz unless it's like some 2D emulation games or something like that. But it can even go up to 8K. So if you want to use this puppy as just a video player, this has more than enough horsepower. Now, okay, that's the RAM, the CPU. You need basically the main core, the memory. Now memory, it is utilizing M.2, basically bit a different format. So whenever you talk about M.2, you get like this, but here's the deal, there is another aspect to it, with that is the other number 30, M.2280, 2260. So you have a different basically width. So 2230 is not common enough. Basically some netbooks use that, and you can buy some off the shelf, but they are not what you call consumer level part. Yes, it is available once in a while, but it's not consumer level. It's not just like Go Samsung SSD. You will not find this form factor. It's like it's specifically built for system integrator, so to say. So that SSD is used, and because they know for a fact to keep the price down, they are cutting too many corners, and the lowest version goes to 64 GB. They have given the fact of SD card, so you can utilize SD card and go YOLO on it, as in like you can actually load games into it. It's not just like songs and all that. No, properly utilize SD card. Now, inherently, you have to understand, even though it looks like a console, it quacks like a console, it's a pocket PC at the end of the day. So it's just a small PC with inbuilt controller. Everything on it is just a PC with extra layer on it. And in terms of horsepower, basically how much oomph it has, teraflops it has, it's almost at the same level as PS4. Now, you may be like, hey, PS4 is like, 1.8 teraflops, this has 1.6 or some 1. Like you get it, like PS4 is on paper a bit more, but you have to understand PS4 was designed long ago. Inherently, it's much older architecture. This has a newer architecture, so even though teraflops will be less, but because of optimization and improvement in system designs, it should on paper at least compete with PS4 or even beat it. So in terms of visual fidelity, how good your game should look if it's done properly, expect PS4 level performance. Now be mindful, most PS4 games have like two categories, either made for fast action, which would be 60 FPS, or like sightseeing like Horizon Zero Dawn, it would be 30 FPS. So you have to be mindful, do not expect like 300 fps if you connect it to big monitor. And the software is open for everyone. That fundamentally means, let's say there is other manufacturer that's like, hey, this is working like a charm and too many people are buying, I want to get into the system. They don't have to design operating system. They can literally control C and control V Steam OS, and they will get all the benefits for it. It's not a locked ecosystem, and the hardware is also not locked. So Steam is going completely against what every other company does, like what Microsoft does with Xbox, what Nintendo does with their hardwares, what Sony does with their hardware. They're going YOLO on it. It's like software YOLO, hardware YOLO. What does that mean? That simply means you can literally format this puppy, install Windows 10 on it if you want to. It's like if you're like, hey, I'm not happy with a Linux system, go YOLO. Just go on Windows, full Windows on it. You don't have to worry about it. Or heck, you may want Ubuntu on it for some reason. You can go YOLO on it, and I'm pretty sure somebody after it comes out, somebody's gonna try to do basically Apple on it just for lols. So you can do that. So hardware is completely open, software is completely open, and on top of that, inherently they are not limiting the system, so they are also expanding the fact that it's a PC. So what if you connect it to a dock and voila, you have a full-fledged PC, and you can run games on full screen, you can use keyboard, you can use mouse, you can have a web browsers, all things. Basically anything like Linux can do, this puppy can do. And because they have a UI layer specifically built by Valve, it's capable. It's like Linux without good UI layer is very hard to deal with. This puppy has solved that issue. So fundamentally that's amazing. And as a hybrid console, you can just connect it to your TV and just game on it. Like, don't even have to think about it. So that is that has been popularized by Nintendo Switch, and there is a demand for it. Heck, I use that like hybrid console design. Basically, I put my mobile phone wirelessly cast to this and use a controller to play games. I do that. Many people do that. So fundamentally, this console is like, yeah, go YOLO on it, and inherently designing the fact that it can output upwards of 8K 60 FPS or 4K 120 FPS. That's more than good enough for more than enough TVs in this planet. So that's a really capable system. Now there is a, whenever this sort of hardware comes in out, there is always this what we call chicken and egg scenario. Now you have to understand that like consoles have to sell a lot. Like you launch the console, but it has to sell a lot, so developers make a game for it. Because if you give two consolers, basically developers, two options: console A that has been sold few million pieces, console B that has been sold many more, like 20 times more or 30 times more, but it's like inferior hardware. They will develop for inferior hardware simply because the more hardware there is like in the people's hand, the more likely somebody is gonna buy the game on it. So for that reason, you have to have developers seeing that you are selling a lot of them. Then customer needs to see there are a lot of games into it. There is no customer that buys, I'm gonna buy PlayStation. What they buy is basically Horizon Zero Dawn, God of War, or whatever have you, like exclusive title. They always buy games on it. That's why like Xbox 360 was good. Like people were buying Halo on it, people were buying Forza on it, or Gears of War on it. You get the point. Like people never buy like console, they buy the games on it. Now this is the issue. How the heck you gonna launch a console like on day one have stuff in it? That's why every major company that has console division, they have their in-house studio to make sure on day one there is enough of a hive, enough of a system that it creates a self-sustaining ecosystem. But sometimes it fails. For example, PS Vita, fundamentally it was much more powerful than basically Nintendo's offering, but from day one it did not have enough games, enough stuff ported into it. It did not sell enough. Looking at the sales report, enough developer did not pour enough interest into this. That reduces total number of available even after 2 years or 3 years. Then people started to stop buying it. Looking at that, whoever was developing it, they also canceled their project, so it died out. So it happens. So there is a chicken and egg scenarios. However, Steam does not have to worry about it. All Steam has to do, look at their basically catalog and be like, at least top 200 games should work on it. And they have done that. They have done like actual physical testing where they're like, let's run hundreds of games on our own library onto this hardware, and it works. It fundamentally works. So they don't have to worry about this. And that's why, like, if you take the Steam library scale, scope, capability of it, Windows, basically Microsoft, Sony, and basically every Nintendo also, you can combine all three, and Steam is like, I'm more than enough to compete against you. So fundamentally, they don't have this chicken and egg scenario. And you may be like, okay, not every game is written for Linux. They know about this. They thoroughly figured it out, and they started development on Proton. And this has been going on for a few years ago. It's not something that today happened. It's like it's been going on for long enough at this time. So there are more than enough games that requires a Windows architecture. They want got the compatibility layer of Proton. It works. It's a known system. It's a completely tested. It's done system. And because they are developing the API completely going into the processor, it's far more optimized. So that works. However, there is one kink in the armor, so to say. The anti-cheat softwares and the DRM that is used by these many gaming studios, they are incompatible. So there are like 2-3 major studios that sell DRM algorithms and anti-cheat software for many of the basically big major games that you know about. So Valve flat out addressed it. It's like, yes, this is a problem at this point in time. We are directly working with them. So Valve is not ignoring it. So that does give me some hope that they are actually trying to solve it. And they are like, okay, let's work with these people, let's try to figure it out, because all they have to do is certify this one CPU. So it can be done. I'm hoping for that, and Valve has enough clout, enough horsepower behind them that it might get done. So that's right now, that's the only issue. But be mindful, even if let's assume this does not work, there is more than enough game that will work. Now, inherently, we are talking about a Gen 1 product. So I would advise what we call cautiously optimistic. So basically, do not get too excited. Like, I'm seeing people are too excited or too negative about it. Like, just be cautiously optimistic about this, because you could have to understand, yes, all YouTuber will buy that. So YouTube will be flooded by it, but does not translate to general public sale. You could see that. You can see like there is not that many console reviews of Nintendo, because Nintendo has like very strict copyright issues. So most players don't talk about it, but here's deal, is still selling like hotcakes. So sales number is the main aspect here. You have to expect good sales. Now, will they sell a lot? I think so. What they're hitting is like really good. So I really do think they can have a very high sale volume. Then we have to understand the second aspect, which is always found out after it has reached the main market: thermals and battery. Now, thermals is because it's a complete desktop grade APU. Heck, if it was coupled up with a like large heatsink, it will perform like a big desktop. So how they are managing it in real world, not in lab scenario, not in like hands of few people, how it's performing in everybody's hand. Then battery. Now battery is a very weird aspect, simply because they claimed 2 hours to 8 hours. That is way too big of a margin to be like an actual claimable thing. So that's the another benefit if like for PlayStation Portable or Nintendo Switches, because game is developed specifically for that. So Nintendo can say, hey, you can only consume this much CPU resources, and based on that they can be like, okay, you can go full on gaming session for at least, let's say, 4 hours. So that may be an issue. Maybe people are like happy with it. It's like, hey, even if it only works for 2 hours, let's say when I'm playing Doom Eternal going YOLO on it, you can be like, hey, all I'm gonna do is have a USB-C cable and a big power bank, done, go home, sweet dreams. Or other people may be like, hey, yeah, it does not work out, I need more battery life. So I do not know, these are things that can only be found once it's actually in the market. Then with the software integration, but that's the anti-cheat, because some of the very big name in the gaming industry right now is dealing with this anti-cheat software issue. So that is a very critical. If they solve this, they have smooth sailing ahead. But if they fail on this front, it could mess things up. And the lowest variant, I really do not like the variant where they're releasing 64 GB. 64 GB is not enough in today's PC game. Heck, free game like from Call of Duty Warzone will consume this puppy like there is no tomorrow. It's like, and let's not even talk about modern warfare games. That's like 120 GB, upwards of that. So fundamentally, this is a really bad opportunity. And from Valve's own talks, I have linked them down below. They are not talking about like this is self-upgradable. And again, even if it was upgradable, you will not find that SSD openly available in the market. So fundamentally, I really did not like this option. Many people could buy that and they're like, hey, wait a minute. Again, how many people do know that? Like, if you have a good gaming system, you bought it from some like Dell or other system indicator, you will not know like how much is 64 GB. You're like, I have a system, it works. I have a system that it does not work. So 64 GB is, I really did not like this idea. I would have been like, okay, let's cut that SKU, try to reduce the price of the second SKU that is like 256 GB, but it also utilize NVMe. And that's also important because games that are in studios right now being worked on, they will have what we call direct access, because PlayStation 5 and Xbox current gen, all of them have what we call a direct access built into it. So the games that are being done built on it right now, they are utilizing that feature, and PC game will also have that because Windows 11 support it inherently. So fundamentally there is a big change coming, and you know that. That's why you have NVMe SSD on higher trend, but this is the 164 GB one that does not have it. That simply means if somebody buys the console now, game from 1 year from now will not be able to utilize. Let's say a game like Far Cry, new Far Cry comes out, and it's like, okay, it has very large worlds, and it's gonna directly load from NVMe. It may end up choked by that 64 GB low SATA level speed. So that's really not good. Then the another aspect is this, like, it may be too heavy. Like, yes, you can test it out, but again, you have to understand, it's like how a person who is working in the gym forgets like how much weight actually means. It's like, if you keep doing this every day, you'll be like, yeah, this does not matter. It's like you give it to a novice, it's like, dude, it hurts my hand. It happens when you're developing things. So who knows what will happen. And you have to understand, Valve have tried to make many hardwares. One of the great success is their index hardware, but other than that, most things have failed. For example, their Steam Link flopped, their PC system. That's why they built the Steam OS system, but they realized what they are selling is a Linux PC. People could build that PC for themselves, and the small form factor is no longer like, proprietary. It's like every Tom, Dick and Harry has this small form factor. Their controller, which was like, why, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's like that also did not work out. So they have like 4, and 3 of them are a failure. So fundamentally speaking, still Gen 1 product, be mindful of it. I really want it to succeed, but be mindful of it. They do have enough failures where it's like, let's be cautiously look at it. Now assume it works. Now what we can see in the future? Well, at this point in time, it has a lot of potential. Like, there is way too many things are working for it versus working against it. And if it succeeds, it could open the operating system. Basically, that Steam OS itself could become a thing that companies like GPD, companies like 1X Player, company like Aeon, they can utilize that. They're like, rather than having a bloated Windows 10, they could have a streamlined Steam OS, and done. They get all the library benefit directly. So that's amazing. Or heck, maybe looking at the success of this puppy, other companies can jump in. MSI could be like, hey, I can build that, or Gigabyte, or Asus may be very close to this. So there's a lot of potential here, and it can open a new hardware category. Portable PC, not portable big Android system. No, portable PC, which we used to have this. Like, I'm pretty sure you have seen many movies where they have like, Sony Vaio computer. It was like Windows Vista and XP kind of days. It was actual PC that was like this small. So that category died off, but it can come back now again. If this puppy works, people could be like, hey, I have this system, it's a gaming system, but it's also a fully fledged PC. So it can work on that front. Another aspect, it could give Linux a very big boost, because you have to, Linux is always fragmented. Unless there is a central authority controlling it, it's not a Linux system that people will know. So for example, Asus, why I'm saying Asus, basically Chrome OS, handled, managed, upgraded, security, patch, everything is done by Google. So it's a locked system. Yes, it's a running on Chrome, basically running on Linux system, but it's a completely locked ecosystem. It's not Linux. Yes, foundation was of Linux, but because of the sweat, blood and tears poured by Google, it's of Google's property. Yes, Google can say, yeah, we are utilizing it, but you can't take our services, basically the patchworks and all that jazz that was done on top of it. Then we come to another aspect like Android. That's also the same story, but like Google poured enough money into it, enough sweat, blood and tears, that's like, no, it's their locked system. But what Steam is trying to do is like, they are still pouring their sweat, blood and tears, but they are not locking it. They're like, okay, take it and go YOLO on it. So that fundamentally gives them actual advantage where Linux becomes a powerful thing, not just like, oh, Chrome OS or this or that. No, Linux becomes powerful, Arch Linux to be specific. So it could in principle allow Linux to gain mainstream acceptance, because once people get over the basic urge, like Linux equals requiring PhD to handle it, and they have a company like Valve working to make sure the ecosystem is like, at least open the goddamn thing, then figure it out. Hey, all I do is web browsing, all I do is word processing or gaming, the system is taken care of, and other things are like good enough where Linux can do that. People will be like, hey, Linux maybe not so bad. Heck, Arch Linux could become slowly a point where hundreds of Linux distribution is not deleted, and everybody is like, Linux means Arch. TN. Of course, they will have in the server industry, they will have like 5-6 derivation, but those people dealing with those systems, they know about that. So that could be a really good thing. So this was my presentation on Steam basically Valve Steam Deck. Hopefully you have liked it, learned from it. In that case, please click the like button, share it amongst your friends. That will help me a lot. If you didn't like it, didn't enjoy it, I urge you to press dislike, press it twice to show me extra disappointment. Please leave a comment because I do try to reply to all of them. Subscribe, press the bell icon if you're free, and as always, thanks for watching.